Hello and welcome to our newest webinar in our Radiation Safety and Wellness webinar series, Energy Efficiency and Radon, Making the Connection. So my name's Lynn McDonald. I am the Manager, Training and Liaison Scientist with the Institute. And our guests today are Dr. Anne-Marie Nicol from Simon Fraser University, Dr. Noah Quastel from the BC Lung Foundation, and Pam Warkentin from the Canadian Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists. Dr. Nicol is an associate professor in the Faculty of Health Sciences at SFU and is a knowledge translation scientist at the National Collaborating Center for Environmental Health. She works in the area of health and risk communication and is part of many local, regional, and national radon outreach projects, including working with the BC Lung Foundation as a scientific advisor for the Healthy Indoor Environments Program. Dr. Quastel is the Director, Law and Policy for the BC Lung Foundation's Healthy Indoor Environments Program. He is a practicing lawyer and a member of the Law Society of British Columbia. He also holds a PhD in human geography. Just checking the chat. Okay. Dr. Quastel's research spans sustainability, the built environment and radon exposure, law and policy. Ms. Warkentin is the Executive Director of CARST, the Canadian Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists, and the CNRPP, the Canadian National Radon Proficiency Program. She has a Bachelor of Commerce and has been working in this field since 2008. We welcome Anne-Marie, Noah, and Pam, and thank them for taking the time to join us today. We also have a new guest for the wellness portion of the webinar. The final 20 minutes of today's webinar will be a movement break led by Charmaine Wong of Jihong Tai Chi in Kijong in Richmond Hill, Ontario. This school is part of the Jihong Tai Chi College, which was founded in 1988 and is a large organization with campuses located primarily in Canada, China, and a few other locations. The schools are all dedicated to teaching the art of Tai Chi with decades worth of accumulated experience and research to define and design a modern advanced set of teaching methods. Let's take a moment to go over the functionality of the Zoom meeting. We ask that during the presentation portion that the audio and video be from the presenters only. We have found that although you can access the audio through the computer or telephone, the quality of sound tends to be better when listening from a computer. There's a chat feature where people can discuss. If you would like, take a moment now to say hello and where you're from. If you have questions arriving from the content, please type them into the chat. As the webinar is only 40 minutes in length and is immediately followed by our wellness session, time may not permit for us to answer all of them during the webinar. The answers will be posted on our website, along with a link to the video recording and a copy of the slides. This can be found under Education Webinars. I will be sending a confirmation of attendance email after the webinar and will include a link to that page with the communication. I will also include the topics covered and the length of time spent in the webinar, as some people have requested this to send to the professional organization. Lastly, I have automatic closed captioning enabled in the slide presentation. If they're being blocked by your Zoom controls, you should be able to select a different way to view the webinar in Zoom, which makes them easier to see. See, we have some West Coast and we have people from across Canada and international as well. The focus today will be the connection between energy efficiency measures and indoor radon. We'll begin with a brief background on radon, what it is, how it enters homes, its health effects, and Health Canada guidelines for mitigation. For more background on radon and its health effects, please see our previous webinars. After this introduction, our guests will present research completed at the BC Lung Foundation related to today's topic. We will then move to a conversation with Noah, Pam, and Anne-Marie, beginning with set questions and moving to questions from participants as time permits. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas with a half-life of 3.8 days. It is generated by the decay of natural uranium U-238 in soil and rocks. It is a noble gas, which means it is chemically inert. It is also colorless, odorless, tasteless, and has no electrical charge. When it undergoes radioactive decay, it emits high-energy alpha particles, which are very damaging to living tissue. Radon, in turn, decays into several alpha and beta emitters. The alpha emitters such as polonium-210, polonium-214, and polonium-218 cause the most internal tissue damage. Part of the reason why is that while radon is chemically inert, gaseous, and electrically neutral, radon progeny are metals, can be electrically charged, and easily attached to dust and aerosols in the air. Radon builds up considerably inside dwellings if they are not sufficiently ventilated. The primary source of indoor radon is the air that penetrates inside old and new houses or buildings through cracks or openings in the basement or the ground floor, through gaps around pipes, and through floor drains. Other sources of indoor radon exist, such as underground water. Some building materials that contain radium and the natural gas used in homes and buildings can also be sources of very small amounts of radon in the home. When radon and its progeny are inhaled, radon is rapidly exhaled because it is a chemically inert gas, while the radon progeny remain lodged inside the lungs because they are in solid form. The radon progeny continuously deposit alpha energy in lung tissue, thus considerably affect the lung cells. Internal alpha radiation is a known carcinogen. According to Health Canada, exposure to high levels of radon, and therefore its progeny, is the second leading cause of lung cancer and the leading cause of lung cancer amongst non-smokers. They estimate that 16% of lung cancers in Canada are attributed to exposure to high levels of radon in indoor air. That translates into 3,200 deaths from radon-induced lung cancer in Canada per year. The activity of a radioactive source is measured in becquerel. 1 becquerel is 1 radioactive decay per second. The concentration of radon gas is measured in becquerel per cubic meter of air. In small concentrations below a few tens of hundreds of becquerel per meter cubed, the lung cancer risk from radon progeny is extremely low. The risk of cancer is proportional to the concentration of progeny, and it also increases with time. A working group of the Federal, Provincial, Territorial Radiation Protection Committee found that for non-smokers, chronic exposure to high levels of radon gas brings the risk of lung cancer from 1 out of 100 people to 5 out of 100 people. For smokers, it raised it from 17 out of 100 to 30 out of 100. It is important, therefore, for people to use a long-term test during the heating season to see the levels of radon to which they are exposed. If the levels are between 200 and 600 becquerel per cubic meter, they should remediate within 2 years. If the levels are above 600 becquerel per cubic meter, remediation should happen within 1 year. For more information on testing and mitigation, Health Canada and our website have numerous resources. In addition to having radon resources, CARST and the Canadian Cancer Society are on the advisory team for the Take Action on Radon National Initiative. On the Take Action on Radon site, you will find information on several programs to support testing and mitigation. Making our homes and buildings more energy efficient is beneficial in many ways. It helps address climate change, lowers heating and cooling costs, and makes our indoor living spaces more comfortable. But several of the qualities of energy efficient buildings impact airflow, for example, airtight construction and air sealing. Our guest today will speak to how making a building more energy efficient can impact radon levels in homes and buildings, and considerations for those who wish to have both energy efficiency and low radon exposure. I would like to thank Dr. Anne-Marie Nicol, Dr. Noah Quastel, and Pam Warkentin for joining us. So before we start the interview and conversation piece, we're going to have a presentation from our guests to talk about the work the BC Lung Foundation has been doing on this topic. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Quastel and Dr. Nicol.
Okay, I guess people can hear me and I'll begin. I think I'll just start sharing our screen and giving my presentation. Anne-Marie will jump in at a certain point where the material is really work that she's done.
Okay.
Okay, and I've just got to hit my slideshow button. Okay. Okay, so we like to do a bit of territorial acknowledgement. We're speaking from Vancouver, both Anne-Marie and me, which are traditional territories of the Musqueam, Salish, and Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. So we're really going to start by talking a little bit of our program. And I wanted to put it into context, a policy context, because that's the kind of work that I do and the perspective that I bring. So often you'll see public commentary, or we should say literature from Health Canada imploring people to test their own homes and fix for radon. And that's really designed to sidestep some policy issues, like as a society, how are we addressing radon? So radon can affect almost all homes and all buildings. So it's widely prevalent through our built environment. It's quite staggering, actually, when you think of all of the indoor spaces we have in Canada, that so many of them are liable to having a radon problem. And now, obviously, the solution is to test and, if necessary, mitigate. But the question is, so what are the levers to make that happen across the country? And many of the spaces we inhabit, when we stop to think about it, aren't under the control of a single homeowner. So in British Columbia, a third of people rent their homes and so are dependent on their landlord. People's workspaces and public buildings are all areas that aren't as easily simply voluntary. And in fact, even when we talk about homeowners, many don't have the money to do it or low income. So there's a kind of injustice in just asking people to fix. So across the planet, we'll see radon action plans. And these are efforts I'll spell out what it is, what an action plan is a way of addressing radon. And what we'll see here is that the World Health Organization has a good compilation. They have a database. And what you see is there are action plans in most of Western Europe and a few other countries scattered around the world, and not Canada. And so part of our work has been to try and raise the profile of radon, not just to create awareness, but to try and stimulate some kind of policy action. And one of the reasons is because the voluntary approach is not working very well. So Stats Canada does keep numbers on knowledge of radon and testing. And only about half of households have heard of radon. And of the households which had heard of radon and also tested, were at 6%. So that's about 3% of homes across Canada having been tested. So people aren't clearly getting the message. And of course, if we want to save lives en masse, we're going to need everyone to test and, if necessary, mitigate. So we can think of it as a public health intervention. We do have radon in the building code in Canada, and of course, it varies across the country. So the National Building Code doesn't call for what's a full radon system. It calls for a kind of a stub. So we didn't talk much yet about the technologies of how people fix radon, but it consists of what's called subslab depressurization. One puts in a vent pipe into the basement, which exits, and that decreases the pressure differential and stops radon from being sucked in and exhausts any radon underneath the slab, underneath the foundation, out of the building. The approach in the National Building Code so far is to just call for a rough-in, which is a kind of a stub, with the idea that people will, if they test, put in a full vent pipe and a fan to drive the system. So in most of the country, there is a requirement for a rough-in in the provinces and territories that follow the National Building Code. And BC has upped it a little bit to actually require a full vent pipe, but in specified locations. In Ontario, where radon is known to be a problem by local authorities, builders have the options of 3 options. One is a simple membrane to try and stop radon coming in, or the rough-in stub or a full vent pipe. And in Quebec, if local area tests show need for a full bend pipe, there are provisions in the construction code. So apart from the building code, there aren't a lot of really clear rules in Canada. And a lot of the radon rules stem from an older era when it was seen to be a problem for miners. So in many cases, we'll see in workplace regulation, very, very high radon levels being allowed with the assumption that that was allowable for miners. But when we think of the many, many different places where people work, like schools and daycares, people living in rented homes, it's harder to see that kind of an overall package. So we could ask ourselves, what does a good radon plan look like? And a lot of the work that you're seeing here is now in Health Canada's Radon Action Guides. They put out proposals, or we should say, they have a kind of guidance for provinces and territories to deal with radon. Health Canada itself works quite a lot on education and outreach and technical standards, but they don't have the jurisdiction to actually set laws for the built environment. So instead, what Health Canada has done is really put it on provinces and territories to take action, but given toolkits for how that could happen. So ideally, we might set a goal for a radon action plan, such as reducing lung cancer deaths or eliminating high radon across the built environment. We want a monitoring and surveillance system. How many homes and residential buildings have high radon? What regions are more prone to high radon buildings? Now, I'm going to, in the next slide, say where this stuff is actually happening and sort of where we're at in Canada. So reference level, at what radon concentrations should action be taken? Well, in Canada, we do have a national radon guideline. Education awareness, of course, to tell people that it's a problem and spread it and ensure the right kind of education for professionals who design buildings and build them. I've gone through the building code for radon and new construction. Now, it's a much bigger challenge reducing radon on existing homes that are already built, because for the most part, it's about convincing people. But we could look at real estate transactions or subsidies, professional standards for radon mitigators, rules in landlord-tenant law or residential tenancies, and public health measures. And again, in workplaces, we can look at occupational health and safety or workers' compensation or school or daycare rules. So where are we at in Canada? No province or territory has an action plan or set goals for radon elimination. We are starting to get better maps. In British Columbia, the BC Centre for Disease Control has an excellent map. So does Nova Scotia. Health Canada and CRNRPP have also put together maps. We have a reference level of 200 becquerels per meter cube. We always like to emphasize that includes homes and workplaces as regularly occupied spaces. The National Radon Program and Take Action on Radon have been doing a good job in education and awareness. And you'll see radon mentioned in the websites of many cities and health authorities now. In new construction, we do have building codes. And in Ontario, there are rules saying radon is an issue in new home warranty. For older homes, some provinces have the real estate governance organizations have said radon is a latent defect, which means that a buyer has to tell a seller if they know radon levels. We have cases in Ontario and Quebec of landlord-tenant law. But for the most part, and we can go back to the stats from Health Canada, there's not a lot of testing happening. And there's very little occasions in which people are confronted and have to test their homes or workplaces. In Ontario, there's a general duty clause around the workplace. But in most places, unless you're in mining, there's going to be very few workplace standards. So we're really trying to take action. Now, what we've been doing is trying to look at areas where, the public is concerned, where action is being taken. And we're quite concerned about energy efficiency for, the reasons that Lynn estimated. So just to start off, it is becoming standard policy in Canada to address climate change, even if it's not framed as an emergency by our leaders. But we have a really significant problem with our building stock. that it consumes 25% of natural gas use, very high numbers. And this is what sometimes called the low-hanging fruit in terms of dealing with climate change, because we have the technology and it's relatively inexpensive to fix homes. So we're getting new model codes talking about net zero ready homes. We're getting the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act and the 2030 Emissions Reduction Plan with a clear statement about addressing buildings, and subsidy programs such as Canada Greener Homes. But what this is doing from a radon perspective is making us feel, one, that there's a huge public health problem if we're making homes have more radon, but also a lost opportunity, because if we're changing our building stock and we're talking about a greener economy, we could also be making our homes healthier and having a healthy economy as well as a green economy. So we've put out a whole bunch of reports under the heading of radon and energy efficiency. We have a report which Anne-Marie will talk to in a minute about making the connections, showing how energy efficiency can increase radon levels. A report on the legal liabilities, the way that there's a kind of a duty of care of people who fix buildings not to give people more lung cancer. An analysis of how the system has gaps, which let radon seep in, and a report on solutions. And we always like to say, you know, don't use this to stop climate action. We absolutely need it. We're just talking about how to do it better. So I'm going to pass it off to Anne-Marie to talk about making the connection.
Thank you, Noah. Okay, this will be a short overview of a large body of evidence. So about a year and a half ago, when it started to become clear to me that building envelope tightness really was impacting the way that air moves within a home and out of a home, I started to look into the literature, the examined energy efficiency initiatives and radon gas levels. And to my surprise, this is an old science. So this article dates back to 1986, which in the United States was really just when the radon program was getting going. And so you can see they were already recognizing the link between limited air exchanges and radon levels. And of course, if any of you were alive during this part of history, you'll realize that we had energy crises things not dissimilar to some of the social forces that are happening now. So energy became very expensive and there was a lot of interest in sealing up homes. And at that point in time, and this is the US government clearly noted, we have similar Canadian documents that clearly noted that tighter homes ended up with higher radon levels. Go ahead, Noah. So I did a nerdy academic review. I'm trained as an epidemiologist, so I went and did peer review research and government reports. And what I found was that most of this research had been done in Europe and the USA, just a little bit in Canada. Lots of different methodologies had been used to examine the relationship between radon and energy efficiency, including knowledge synthesis, so literature reviews, modeling assessments where people took computer programs, looked to see what happens if we alter one parameter and not another, and then actual measurement studies where they'd gone in and tested homes before they had been energy retrofitted and then after. And I felt that this sort of research was really close to what we would want to understand for our Canadian housing stock. And just to point out that, again, the United States has been a leader in this area, and they've recently put out a 2020 report that synthesizes a lot of the evidence that they've been doing for the last 20 years. And as a result, they've published guidelines for the EPA, or help the EPA recognizing that energy savings need to include the word health with them, because in our efforts to manage climate and the environment, we may very well be leaving health out of the equation. Next, please, Noah. Oh, I can't see the slide. Does it? Oh, no.
I have no idea what is going on there, so I will.
Okay, well, go back. I can, yeah, let's talk to it. So the big question was, does energy efficiency increase radon levels? And the simple answer to the question is yes. And so the majority of studies that were done in Europe agree that retrofits that seal up homes for air tightness do increase radon levels. And in particular, things like double glazed windows and doors, sealing of cracks and gaps, increasing attic and sidewall insulation, and more overall internal insulation actually does serve to increase radon levels. And that radon levels are highest when the air exchanges of homes are lowered. And that windows and doors in particular, and again, this is important because often these are, DIY type projects that people can do at home. And so we need to be understanding that even simple changes that we make to our homes that seal them up actually are also sealing contaminants indoors. And just a shout out that it's not just radon that is a contaminant that is influenced by these efforts, that other indoor air pollutants also can be elevated when you shut a house up for energy reasons. Next, please.
Let me see if I can go back to the slideshow.
Okay. And this isn't, so I had done my analysis on older homes, existing homes, because I'm interested in retrofits, but we also have some evidence in Canada that over time, radon levels are increasing in new homes too. And, I work in public health. And so I've been told that, oh, Anne-Marie, don't worry about it. The building code is going to solve the radon problem. And, we're just in 70 years, there won't be a radon problem. But the evidence to that points to the contrary. So a fairly large study was done in Alberta, and that clearly showed that the newer a home was, the higher the radon levels were on average. And they put this down to things like a larger footprint of a home, poorer construction materials that led to more cracks in the ground, things like vaulted ceilings that help draw radon gas from the ground into the home. And also the fact that we are building things in a more energy tight and efficient way to save money and address climate targets. One caveat, though, is that newer buildings with balanced systems, so supply and exhaust are balanced, may actually have lower radon levels. So a small signal in this analysis that not all new homes, but homes, sort of standard homes that were built in sort of regular subdivisions, might be impacted by these measures. There has been some evidence to looking at what we call specialty homes, so net zero or passive homes. Now they build these a lot more in Europe because energy is a lot more expensive there, and there's a much bigger push to build these types of homes. Some are built in Canada, and these don't include radon in their codes generally. These are done for ventilation and energy related factors. There was a study in Ireland that did show that these kinds of specialty homes, when built right, on average tend to have lower radon levels. But you can see here the fourth home in this study actually did have higher radon levels in certain rooms of the home. So they're not a guarantee, but they might be better. But these aren't cheap homes. So they take a lot of effort to build and maintain. So it's possible that this is a solution for newer homes, but might not be accessible to the average person. Next, please. So yeah, high performance homes could help us deal with elevated radon issues, but they need to be built right. And we do have some guidance within the building code. And one of the big things is the membrane. So one of the problems with energy efficiency initiatives is that they address the upper part of the house where the radon can leave, and they don't deal with the ground part where radon comes up. So we're still allowing communication with the underground soil that allows the radon to come into the home. It just can't leave. So there's research that was done in British Columbia looking at, well, what happens if we have good mechanical ventilation using heat recovery systems and our passive system. And this is the research study there. And they did find some improvement in radon levels with these systems built in. So ensuring good airflow, or again, using materials under the slab to reduce communication with the soil, and then having a proper fan to draw the radon up and out of the home. These are factors that will help reduce radon in homes, in newer homes. Next, please.
Okay,
Oh,
I guess
back to you.
I'm gonna speak now.
Okay, I have lots more to say, but we'll save it for question period.
I'm looking if there are any questions, but I guess that's gonna wait till the end.
Okay.
So we looked at different duties of care. So, I mean, generally in law, I'm not allowed to fix your house in a way that is going to give you cancer or create a disease. I'm giving you harm, and I'm supposed to not do that. I'm supposed to work to a standard of care to make sure that foreseeable and substantial dangers are avoided. And it's a basic principle of construction law. And I've put up the Supreme Court of Canada case, for the lawyerly people that they can reference. This is a very firm duty of care. Now, it hasn't been found particularly for radon, but there's no reason in principle that a contractor who creates a high radon environment through a building retrofit, and that leads to someone getting lung cancer and dying, could be a substantial liability. I'm not worried that a case I mean, on the details, a case like that might be hard to go through, but in the law, I think it's pretty clear. We have lots of cases in our legal system of informed consent. So if I'm a university researcher experimenting with a new drug, I really have to tell people what they're getting into before they take that as part of my research. And in medical procedures, if I'm putting something, actually almost anything, any kind of surgery, the doctor will say, we need your consent for this procedure, and the doctor is going to warn you. So sort of a double-fold way of dealing with the duty of care is to get informed consent and to give a warning. Now, the warnings we see, in breast implant cases, there's a famous one from the Supreme Court of Canada, but we also see it every day. And so I put a picture up of a warning, a slip and fall warning in a public space, and we see that all the time. And so what we're asking, is those principles to now be taken seriously by people who do energy efficiency around radon. But when we looked at the current energy efficiency program, and we have another, report on this called Gaps in the System, we found a huge absence. So there's just an example I have of materials from BC Hydro's Power Smart program. And, they're giving out free kits to give people weather stripping. That's great. Seal up the drafts in your windows and doors. Parts of the interior of BC, like Castlegar and Prince George, have extremely high radon levels. Over 30% of homes in many communities in BC have high radon, but there people are, putting on the weather stripping under BC Hydro's advice. And, they're nice about things. They're giving away free energy saving kits, and they have a guide on how to, use the energy saving kit, an installation guide, and it does not mention radon at all. Right? So there's just actually no warning given whatsoever. This is typical, to be honest. There's just a widespread lack of information about radon associated with the energy efficiency industry. So we can also look at the grants and loans out there. So Canada Greener Homes, actually there's no funding for ventilation or HRVs either. So they're not thinking about they're just not concerned about indoor air quality and the relationship between energy upgrades. So it isn't covered. That's, for homeowners to do if they want to. CMHC Green Home, this is a grant program associated with CMHC. In high rises, there's a LEED standard. So radon actually isn't the LEED standard, but for not normal homes, but for low rise construction and single family residents, no, there's nothing there. The Energy Affordability Program of Ontario Independent System Operator, no provisions for ventilation or HRVs. Enbridge, just no mention of indoor air quality. Clean BC, no mechanisms for mechanical ventilation. We did find necessary health and safety and ventilation upgrades, getting a limited amount of money on the Clean BC's income qualified program. And we'll go talk to them and see what they think about including radon in there, but I didn't see any indication that that was included to date. Now, homeowners are often putting up energy efficiency upgrades on their own. the way our system works is people hire a NRCan advisor, usually with some subsidy from Canada Greener Homes, but homeowners are supposed to put things together. So they can do the weather stripping themselves, or they could put in a heat recovery ventilator or a heat pump. But it then becomes, it falls on the homeowners to understand the home as a system and the indoor air quality and radon implications. And there's an interesting article from Hoek and Parker, which looked at 19,000 residential energy evaluations in Waterloo and found, that people weren't generally putting in HRVs. So, when you actually study what people are doing, homeowners are really not putting attention on indoor air quality. We talked to energy advisors and we found some interesting issues. In fact, NRCan does know radon's a problem. In the end notes, the HOT 2000 software, which is used by all NRCan advisors, it says, watch out for radon, it might be a problem. But the energy advisors don't actually know the software is doing this, because how they input in their computers and the printout, they don't see. And so when we talked to the advisors, we said, is there any mention of radon? They didn't know. No, we don't know about it. Do you know that HOT 2000 includes radon warnings? No, they didn't know about it. And of course, they weren't discussing it with their clients. The clients weren't raising indoor air quality and radon issues. And there's no formalized process to talk about it. So clients aren't getting the word, but the NRCan advisors are part of an industry which is making buildings airtight and potentially giving people or increasing lung cancer risk. And, there's going to be people who get lung cancer and die out of this process. And there is no process of informed consent or warning happening properly. So that is a serious gap in liability. So we have solutions going forward, education and training for energy advisors and contractors, clearer messaging and energy efficiency guides and manuals on IAQ and radon. And, the EPA's Energy Plus Health is a good starting point. We want advisors and contractors to test, to give the message to test after a retrofit, right? This isn't such a big, all that needs to happen is people know about radon, test after a retrofit, and then mitigate if need be. That mitigation is not going to significantly hurt their energy efficiency improvements. So it's just about knowledge and making sure there's informed consent. Contractors could easily get clients to sign off, as so could NRCan advisors. Contractors could also play a role in ensuring that there's testing after a renovation and then helping with mitigation. We want product warnings on manufactured goods that tighten buildings. And I think most immediately, and which should happen if we lived in a more just world, is that when people are given grants and incentives for energy retrofits, testing and radon mitigation are covered as well. So our project outputs are on the website, and this has been a short overview. And that's our presentation. We can take questions.
All right, so thanks so much. There's information there about how to contact Dr. Quastel and Dr. Nicol. Do appreciate it. I'm just looking at the time. I think we'll skip. I think you answered just about every question I had. So let's just skip to the questions. I think that Pam had hopped in, and then we'll probably have to move on. Let me just. So in terms of, I'm trying to find, I've got too many things going here. I think there was a question, but Pam may have answered it in terms of, so it said, Dr. Quastel, you say the National Building Code requires a stub be installed. How many iterations of the building code does this apply to? Not everyone lives in a home built under the current code. Is it possible many homes will not have this rough in slab? And I think Pam had answered that.
Yeah,
maybe.
so I answered it in the chat, but I'll just quickly answer it. This was brought into the 2010 building code. So there was one province that adopted it in 2011, but most took till 2012 to adopt it. And then in Alberta, it was 2014. So obviously anything that's built before those years wouldn't have the stub. The stub doesn't fix it. It's just an introduction, the first 12 inches or so in the floor so that it could be extended. As Noah and Anne-Marie talked about, really the other measures as part of the code, other than the stub, included sealing. So the polyliner and other, granular layer and other wording requiring sealing are also really important, and those were brought into that 2010 building code. And so I listed the provinces that are including it. So basically all but Ontario. Quebec's a little bit different, although there is some requirements in Quebec. And BC has gone and done a little bit different. They've divided their province into a table of 2 jurisdictions. So either you're in the radon control measures or you're not. If they're a non-incorporated municipality, then they won't be included in the measures because they're just it's a table. But basically, you either have control measures, and there it's an extended rough in. So it doesn't just stop at the 12 inches, it goes all the way up to the exterior of the building.
All right, thanks, Pam. Just a comment from Bruce in the chat that my home is very new, has a well-balanced HRV and meets LEED Gold standards. It's still blue over 275 becquerel per cubic meter. I test thousands of buildings across Canada, and many well and properly ventilated buildings exceed 200 becquerel per meter cubed. We need to know that good ventilation may not be enough to stop radon. We need to test. And I think that's why we put this webinar on, is that everybody needs to know that if you modify your home's ventilation in any way, if you've already tested, you need to retest. And if you've never tested, you need to test because it's the only way to know. You can't just say your neighbors are fine, so I'm fine. You have to check your home. Andrew's saying energy advisors should recommend an HRV if the blower door test determines there's 3 or less air exchange per hour at 50 pascals in the home.
So just a comment on
sorry.
the HRV, that it shouldn't be used to reduce the radon levels. It doesn't effectively reduce radon levels. You could calculate the percentage, but when you do radon mitigation, the goal really is to reduce it to as low as possible. So usually that means installing a radon mitigation system. However, if somebody has an HRV installed, we are seeing, and I think Henry and Noah can attest to this as well, that they're not being maintained properly. So homeowners aren't cleaning them, they aren't getting them properly balanced. And so this can actually create a depressurized system in the home, or a worse depressurization. And so the HRV could be the cause of the problem of more radon coming in if it's not properly balanced, and it's creating that depressurized environment. So, you could fix your HRV and that may solve the radon, but then you would want to make sure you have continual monitoring so that you can address when this now goes out of balance again, and make sure that you're addressing it as need be.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I just put in the chat the BEX report, which is the US report, where they've done some very granular looking at what different kinds of systems in these weatherized homes actually work, and fascinatingly, things that solve problems on ground floors with extra ventilation, mechanical exhaust, actually increase radon levels in the basement. So they're still at a loss as how to fix this, because it's energy here and health is still very much over here, and there is no clear solution going forward other than testing and mitigating after you've done an energy retrofit.
Yeah, are they finding the vapor barrier, like homes with that, or did they look at that versus?
These are low income housing that a lot of the research is done with. So they do add a membrane, which of course helps, but it's not a perfect solution. They're often perforated. They may not be thick enough. So, but they're trying to add these different things to their system, and it's still very much a work in process. They just come out and say, energy efficiency will not fix your radon problem. We encourage you strongly to test after you've had it done.
Yes. Paula would ask the question, is there a difference between an HRV and a ductless heat pump to provide air exchanges?
Well, they work a bit, they work a bit differently, but I'm not the right person to answer that question. There's probably someone even in the audience that has more technical expertise than myself on this, or even Pam.
But I think what Pam's point was that these air exchange systems are not necessarily going to fix the radon issue, that you have to test after they're working and see. Is that what you were saying, Pam?
Yeah, they provide ventilation, so they'll dilute the air, and so they could provide reduction of radon system, and it depends on the building. So normally in a residential situation, we don't recommend using an HRV to fix it. But if there's one present, maintain it and clean it.
Okay. And do you have any comment on ductless heat pumps? Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's any air coming in with the heat pumps. So
Yeah, we have a lot of them in PEI and I'm not seeing, I don't think.
yeah,
it's-
so
it's
I
what we
have
do
heard a
change.
number of concerns raised about the heat pumps. If they're not properly, yeah, again, it's just another system that's brought into the home. But there's no ventilation that's added with them. Yeah.
And just, we're getting towards the end. It's just, I'd like to mention this one from Aaron and then Pam, you could speak to your answer. Who's responsible for the installation of the rough in? In the US, plumbers tend to be the ones to install RNC stuff, but they also tend to be installed improperly from what I hear from local mitigators.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, it's the person constructing the home, right? So but we do see that they are calling on plumbers to do it. They just sort of assume the plumbers know how to use pipe. So here you go, you do it. The problem is that we're seeing they're not using the right kind of pipe. They're not installing it in the right location. They're not installing it with a proper sealed cap or labeled. So there are concerns with that. And so we are seeing builders rely on certified professionals in certain pockets, especially where they're, people are testing their homes and holding the builders to account for not properly installing certain measures.
and just a comment there from Fahad in the chat. I believe safety education on radon risk and safe installation needs to be part of the trades curriculum, in addition to more government efforts to heighten the risk perception and radon education targeting the public, especially homeowners. Thanks for that comment, Fahad. One thing that we do, part of our outreach at the Radiation Safety Institute of Canada, is that we support the SHSM program here in Ontario, which is the Specialist High Skills Major, and we have taught a few radon courses to people and to students in the construction trades at the high school level. So it's nice to hear that, it was well received and will continue to do so. So with that, just looking at the time, I would like to really thank our guests today, Pam, Noah, and Anne Marie. And we hope that we found the webinar on radon informative. We get feedback from people that sometimes people want just the general level information in our webinars, and sometimes they want something a little more technical. And I think this spoke to that audience well. So we do thank you. We will send out an email link to the video recording afterwards. And if you have any questions about this topic or any others, just know that we are available to answer those questions. It's part of our toll-free information service. So the contact information is on the screen. We also visit our YouTube channel, find us on Facebook. So just before we go and say goodbye to our guests, is there any last words from any of the three of you for our guests today in terms of energy efficiency and radon? What message do you want them to take away? So Noah, do you mind speaking first?
Well, just that we're transforming our building stock, and we have to. And we have a goal of reducing fossil fuel use in homes, and we should also have a goal of making our homes healthier and saving lives.
That's great. And Pam?
Yeah, I really am excited about the work that Noah and Anne-Marie have been doing. I think this is a really important area that they're addressing, and we need to continue this discussion. So I really appreciate you guys for coming and sharing this. And
Anne-Marie?
We are in an age where people are providing funding for people to change their homes to make them more energy efficient, and any advocacy that we can have around those programs, both provincial and federal, to encourage those to include things like radon testing post retrofit. I welcome anyone who would like to come along on this journey with us, because we can do climate and health together at the same time.
So thank you. And just a reminder, anyone here today or anyone watching the video afterwards, we do encourage you to test your home, because you can't tell if you don't check. There's no way, you can't feel it, hear it, taste, smell. So you don't know, and it's a long-term test, and typically during the heating season. So, and November is Radon Action Month, and we are glad that you could be here today. With that, so we'll thank our guests, and we thank them for their time. We're going to move on to the wellness portion. I know that not everybody can stay, but if you can stay for the wellness, we do have a new type of wellness. We've done Latin dance in the past, we've done yoga in the past, and today I'm very pleased that we are going to do beginner Tai Chi, led by Charmaine Wong of Jihong Tai Chi and Qigong in Richmond Hill, Ontario. And I'd like to welcome you, Charmaine, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. So, hi, thank you for introducing me, and thank you for having me here. So before we start to do any movements, I would just like to address one question. What is Tai Chi? So in its broadest sense, Tai Chi is a representation or exemplification of Chinese culture and philosophy through various movements. Nowadays, people usually practice Tai Chi for its health benefits, but it's originated as a martial art, and more specifically, as an internal martial art. So this phrase has two aspects to it, internal and martial art. As a martial art, obviously, is performed through various physical movements, usually for sparring or for self-defense purposes. So it's something external, something that can be seen. As an internal martial art, these movements are driven by the mind or imagery, and often requiring a high degree of concentration in a meditative state. So very often, Tai Chi is referred to as a moving meditation. So in other words, Tai Chi practices are essentially external movements driven by internal mindfulness. Health benefits from Tai Chi are therefore derived from these two aspects. On the external or martial arts side, our body is required to be placed in an optimal state in order for the martial art to be functionally effective. So physical health benefits from Tai Chi would include something like a good posture, proper alignment, balance, stability, just to name a few. On the internal side, we aim to cultivate an intrinsic strength, or what we call internal jing in Chinese, meaning internal energy or power. And of course, being a meditation, we also can derive from it mental health benefits. So Tai Chi are usually practiced in forms, meaning choreographed sequences of movements, often pretty lengthy. Today, we're just gonna select a few movements from the most popular form called the Yang form for our practice. So let's get started. All right, so I'm gonna play some background music, which would usually help with our meditative state and for calming effect. So if Lynn can allow me to share.
Are you able, I made you co-host. Oh, there should be two of you. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. There we go. I missed the second
Right.
one.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, that's okay. All right, now there we go. Okay. All right, so we're gonna just do some warm up to start with. So I would like you to take this opportunity to get off from the chair, stand up, and do some stretching exercises. So first of all, try to place your feet shoulder width apart. All right. And then you place the fingers together in front of your belly, your waist area. Then you bring the hands up to about chest level, and then turn the palms up and stretch upward. Ideally, with the palms facing towards the ceiling. And then you relax, release the hands, and bring them back down the sides. And you can bend the knees a little bit as you go down, sitting down a little bit. Then we're going to repeat. This time we're going to add some breathing. So as you bring the arms up, do a deep and slow breath in. Then you relax and release the hands and bring them back down, just like before. Now we're going to do a couple more of these This movement is simple enough for you to take away. And you can do that every now and then if you find that you are stressed or you just need to do some movements after sitting too long in a chair. And then open and come back down. Let's just do one more time. Go up. Often when we stretch upward, it's a good place to take a deep breath in. And then slowly breathe out as you bring the hands back down. Okay, relax, and you can straighten back up. Now we're going to do one exercise which we call a basic exercise that we always practice before we start a form, a Tai Chi form. So what you do is you bring the hands up with the palms more or less facing each other, as if you are holding a small ball in front of your chest. Then you push these arms forward with the fingers still more or less pointing slightly upward. And then you just bring the hands back down, right in to chest level. And then you repeat. Now we call this movement stretching of our arm bows. So one of the essential elements of this move, in addition to being relaxed, is that when you stretch your arms out, you want to have them fully extended without locking your elbows. And then when you bring them in, you want to keep the hands in front of the chest as well as the elbows in front of the chest. So you stretch them out again without locking the elbows. And then you bring them in. Tai Chi movements are done in a slow, continuous manner. And you will find later on, if you do practice Tai Chi, that slow movements are actually more difficult to execute. But they tend to bring you a calmness in your mind. And you can really focus on the internals of the body, what you are feeling from doing these movements. We're going to do this a couple more times. Now try to have all the shoulders relaxed, all the joints relaxed. You can stand straight up, but the knees are slightly unlocked. So keep the knees flexible. One last time. All right. Now, after bringing the hands back in, you just lower the hands and relax. Now, we're going to do a movement, a very widely known movement called cloud hands. All right. So with the feet shoulder width apart, or even slightly farther than shoulder width apart, you want to bend the knees a little bit, sitting down a little bit. You don't have to go very low. Then let's just bring one hand up. So I can be your mirror image. So actually the movement is symmetrical anyways. So for example, you bring your left hand up. The hand is facing your own body. And the other hand, you're going to place it with the palms facing down, slightly in front of the body on the side. So you go to your left side, the side where you have your hand up. And then after you reach the end of that side, you switch your hands. You bring your right hand up. Now the right hand has the palm facing yourself, and your left hand is now facing down. Then you go back to your right side. And then you repeat. You switch the hands. Your left hand goes up, palms facing yourself, and the other hand, palms facing down. And now you go to your left side. Again, one of the important things is that the hand that you have higher facing yourself is the side that you are always moving your body towards. So now, for example, if you have your left hand up, you're going to move to your left side. And then you switch the hands. Now you have your right hand up. You're going to move to your right side. Again. Now let's try to make sure that you're relaxed. Your shoulders in particular, you want to have them relaxed. So don't shrug your shoulders, try to relax. Then you try to engage your mind. How do you feel? Focus on the circulation of energy within the body when you're doing this. Let's do that in more of a flowy state. You want to have the movements slow and continuous. If you are ready for it, you can have a wider stance. And then you can feel more of the weight shifting, which allows you to have even a bigger flow of the body. This is called cloud hands or waving hands like cloud. Just let's do that one more time on each side. All right, when you're finished, you just put the hands down and you can bring the feet back to about shoulder width apart. Now I'm going to do one more move together with you. And this move is called parting wild horse's mane. So it's not a difficult move. So first of all, I would like you to place one hand over another, palms facing each other, as if you are holding a big ball in front of your chest. Then the next part is that you just open your hands with the higher hand pushed down and the lower hand move up so that the two hands are more or less diagonal to each other. Let's do that one more time on the same side. Let's say you have your right hand over your left hand. Your right hand would then go down a little bit to slightly in front of the body and to the side. And the left hand would just move up to your upper left corner. Let's do that one more time. Open up. The palms don't change directions. Your right hand is still facing down and the other hand is still facing up. Now this time, we're gonna slightly turn our body when we do it. So let's start with turning the body slightly to the right. And then as you turn the body, you square back to the front with the hands still moving along the same path. Let's do that one more time on this side. Slightly turn to the right, hold ball in front of your body. Then as you square back to the front, you open those arms. Let's switch sides. Let's do it on the other side. Now, using your left hand and the right hand at the bottom, we're going to hold ball. Slightly turn to your left. And then as you square back to the front, your left hand goes down, your right hand goes up. Let's do that again. Let's do that one more time, making sure that your body is relaxed. Feel the body is filled with energy. Feel that the body is not stiffen up so that you can fill it with energy. All right, now let's do that alternate sides, right? Let's start with the other side. Right hand on top of the left hand and turn. And then let's switch to the other side. Left hand on top of the right hand, body slightly turned to the left, and turn square open. Let's do that one last time. Turn to your right with the right hand on top, and open. Turn to your left with the left hand on top, and open. Okay, now usually Tai Chi is done also with footwork. Today, we are probably not going to have enough time to go through the footwork part. So hopefully one day, if you're interested to learn Tai Chi, we'll start to work on the lower body as well, which is very important to strengthen our lower body in order for us to improve our balance. So for today, we're just going to do one last thing to cool down. All right. So again, feet shoulder width apart. With the palms facing up, let's bring the hands up the front. This time we're going to breathe in, raise the palms up to about chest level, and turn the hands back to your body while you breathe out, and place the hands back down. Let's do that a couple more times. Long, slow, deep breath in as you bring the hands up. When your hands make a circle, slowly exhale, and when you bring the hands back down. Let's do that one more time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay. This is what we're going to do today. So hopefully you enjoyed the time. And if you have questions, I can be here. Otherwise, I'll pass it back on to Lynn.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm getting my chair back. I was following along with a coworker.
Very good, thank you.
So thanks so much, Charmaine. Thanks for those who could stay. And we will be having webinars probably about once a month this year. So hopefully Charmaine will be able to come back and join us and teach us some footwork as well. And so thanks to everyone that was able to come, and I'll get those emails out when we get the videos up in the next few days. So thanks again, and see you again.
All right,
Charmaine.
thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.